It started on one of those evenings when the sky turned purple before the night properly settled in, a strange twilight that seemed to blur the edges of reality. I had just finished my shift at the bookstore downtown, and as always, the walk home was my quiet time, a small ritual that helped me unwind. My name is Emily, and though I lived alone in a modest apartment, I had grown used to the silence that filled its walls. But that night, silence didn't feel like a comfort. It felt heavy, like it was waiting for something. The streets were unusually empty, the lamps flickering with a sickly yellow glow. As I walked, I shoved my hands deeper into my coat pockets, fighting against the chill. My fingers brushed against the smooth shape of the old locket I carried everywhere, my mother's locket. She had passed it down to me years ago before she died, whispering that it would always keep me safe. Normally, the thought of her made me smile, but that night, an unexplainable unease gnawed at me. Halfway down Elm Street, I felt it, a sudden brush against my hand. It was so faint I almost dismissed it as my coat shifting, but then it happened again. A touch. A hand, cold and clammy, brushing against my skin inside my pocket, as though it belonged there. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I yanked my hand out, spinning around, but no one was near me. The street was empty. The only sound was the soft rattle of leaves blown by the wind. I told myself I was imagining it. Work had been stressful, and exhaustion played tricks on the mind. Shaking off the feeling, I hurried home, fumbling with the keys before pushing my way into the apartment. The moment I closed the door, I leaned against it, chest rising and falling too quickly. The apartment was still, every shadow exactly where I'd left it. Yet the sense of being watched crawled up my spine. I poured myself some tea, trying to convince myself I was safe. But when I lifted the mug, I froze again. My fingers were damp, as though someone had held my hand moments ago. Cold dampness that didn't belong to me. That was the first night. Over the next few days, the touches became more frequent. Sometimes, I would feel icy fingers brushing my cheek when I lay in bed. Other times, the back of my hand would prickle as though someone was holding it tightly, their grip so real that I would gasp and pull away, only to see nothing but air. I stopped sleeping well. Shadows seemed darker, corners seemed deeper, and mirrors began to feel dangerous. One evening, I sat at the desk in my living room, forcing myself to finish paperwork. The lamp cast a weak golden glow across the desk. As I reached for a pen, I felt it again, a cold hand pressing against mine, guiding my fingers across the page. My heart pounded as I watched words form on the paper, not from me, but from something else. "You can't leave me." The pen clattered from my grasp, and I shoved back the chair, almost toppling it. My pulse raced as I stared at the words. The room seemed to close in, suffocating me with its silence. I didn't recognize the handwriting, and yet the message felt directed right at me. That night, I dreamed of a woman with pale skin and lifeless eyes. She whispered my name again and again, her icy hands gripping mine until I woke up screaming. When I glanced at my wrist, bruises in the shape of fingers had formed. I had no explanation. No one else was there. No one had touched me. I confided in my friend Rachel the next day, over coffee. Her eyebrows knitted together with concern as I told her about the cold hands, the writing, and the bruises. She tried to rationalize it: stress, sleep deprivation, even mild hallucinations. "Emily, you've been working too much. You need rest, not ghost stories," she said. But I knew it wasn't stress. The cold touches were real. Too real. When I got home that night, the locket my mother gave me was lying open on my nightstand. I hadn't touched it. Inside the locket, where my mother's photo should have been, was something else, a scrap of paper with shaky writing. Mine. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt icy fingers tracing my skin, pausing over my lips as if to silence me. At one point, I screamed into the darkness, "What do you want from me?" But silence answered me. Silence and the cold. Desperation drove me to research. I spent hours reading about hauntings, restless spirits, and the possibility of cursed objects. One theory stood out. Sometimes, spirits latched onto objects of deep emotional value, binding themselves to the living through sentimental attachments. My mother's locket. Could it be? Could that gift of love have turned into a prison? I decided to test it. I left the locket in the kitchen drawer overnight, far from my bedroom. But at 3 a.m., I woke up choking, the air thick and freezing. My hands clawed at my throat, and in the dim light, I saw it, a shadow crouched at the foot of my bed. Its face blurred, its eyes hollow, but its hands were sharp and pale, reaching for me. The locket lay on my chest, its chain strangling me. I ripped it off and hurled it across the room. The shadow vanished instantly, leaving me gasping in the dark. Days passed in a blur of terror. I barely ate, barely left the apartment, too afraid to leave the locket unattended, but too scared to touch it. I tried burning it once, setting it in a metal dish and lighting a match, but the flame died as soon as it touched the chain. I tried throwing it in the trash outside, but by morning, it was back on my nightstand. The spirit wasn't letting go. Then came the night of the storm. Rain hammered against the windows, and thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. I sat in the living room, clutching a candle because the power had gone out. My reflection in the darkened window looked pale, almost ghost-like. And then I saw it behind me, a figure standing so still, with eyes that glowed faintly. Its hands were visible, thin, bony, and unnaturally white. They reached forward, slowly, toward my shoulders. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I only whispered, "What do you want?" The voice came, soft and broken, as though it came from beneath water. "Stay with me. Forever." The candle flickered violently before extinguishing, plunging me into darkness. And in that darkness, I felt the coldest embrace I'd ever known. My body froze, my breath caught, and for a terrifying moment, I wondered if this was how I would die. But then, something inside me rebelled. I remembered my mother's voice telling me the locket would keep me safe. Maybe not by keeping things away, but by giving me the strength to fight. With every ounce of willpower, I screamed, "You don't own me." The shadow hissed, its grip tightening, but I tore myself free, grabbing the locket and pressing it against my chest. The chain burned against my skin, glowing faintly, and the air filled with a sound like shattering glass. The figure shrieked, the room shaking violently, and then it was gone. The silence that followed was heavy, but this time, it felt different. It felt final. Since that night, the cold touches have stopped. My apartment feels lighter, though I still jump at shadows. I keep the locket locked away, unsure if it is a blessing or a curse. Some nights, I still dream of pale hands reaching for me, but when I wake, my skin is warm. They say grief can bind spirits, that love can turn to obsession. I don't know who she was or why she chose me, but I know this. When I felt those cold hands, I also felt something else. Warm fear. And fear leaves marks you can never truly erase.